on. We're not going to let it happen. We're not going to lose our cities over this. And this will go further. We're starting very strongly with D.C., and we're going to clean it up real quick, very quickly, as they say.
So the question is, does the situation actually warrant such a dramatic and provocative response? Or, as Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, says, is D.C. just the first step of militarizing cities like dictators do? CNN legal analyst Joey Jackson joins us in our fifth seat. It's an obvious point why Trump would start with D.C., because D.C. is the one place in this country where there's a little bit more leeway to do this. But I think the question people are asking themselves is this a trial run for more?
So it could be, all right? So there's a couple of considerations, Abby. The first, of course, political, and that's a story, I think, that needs to be talked about, whether it's warranted, whether it's appropriate. You played the clip there. If crime is down, and of course some suggest it's down lowest in 30 years, is this necessary? The next is the legal. So there's two things to look at with respect to whether it's legal. The first thing is, D.C., we all know, is very different from any other American city. Why? Because Congress has enacted legislation to allow it to be largely under federal control. What does that mean practically? It means practically that Congress essentially could do whatever it wants in terms of overturning anything the city council does. It also means that the president of the United States is in charge of the National Guard. That distinguishes D.C. from any other state in the country where you have governors that are in charge. So he clearly has more authority, that is the president, as it relates to doing things in D.C. The other issue, finally, is whether or not he can usurp the authority of the locals in terms of the police commissioner, the fire, etc. And that is a question of whether there is an emergency. So on the one hand, National Guard, he's the commander-in-chief, send them in. On the other hand, could he now suggest or otherwise employ the locals to be under federal control? That's an issue which would be whether it's an emergency and these are emergency conditions.
And to your earlier point, I mean, when on the one hand they're saying that crime is plummeting, and on the other hand they're saying that this is an emergency and it's never been this bad, those two things don't really coincide.
This is about control and distraction for Donald Trump. If he were serious about cutting crime, he wouldn't be proposing cutting $400 million from the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Department to regulate and help with guns, or cutting $500 million from the FBI, 700 agents, or the DEA with drug enforcement, or the Office of Violence Against Women, $100 million from there, right? This is about control. First he went for the press, then he went for the universities, then he went for the lawyers, then the federal workforce, and now it's the cities. This is about him having control, making an example out of D.C. He's going to move on to these other cities, by the way, that also, as you mentioned, have the plummeting homicide rates that D.C. does, and also to distract from the Epstein files like he's been doing with all these things that he's been rolling out.
I mean, I hear you chuckling, Ben, but there's no question that it is mostly politics here, because if he wanted to deal with violent crime, really, where it's really bad in this country, there are a lot of places that he could start.
But he can start in the nation's capital where it is really bad. And if you look at the numbers, I understand you're excited about a 30-year low. He's saying we're not done yet. You start and you keep going, and there are people there that are dying. There's people, go back to 2023. For every 100,000 people, 1,200 violent crimes, and 4,300 property crimes.
I know it's incredibly convenient to go back to 2023 when
well, those are when we have numbers. So I'm trying to be accurate for you.
We have 2024 numbers. When 2023, you're right, there was a spike in violent crime in D.C. and in other parts of the country. But I think the point is that violent crime is on the decline. It's not just a D.C. thing. It's across the country.
I agree, and a lot of it's leadership of Trump.
No, it was happening before Trump. It has nothing to do with...
I strongly disagree.
Wait, hold on a second. What evidence do you have that it's the leadership of Donald Trump?
When you have the President of the United States of America that's enabling law enforcement to do their job, when you have ICE agents that are going out there...
So then why did the trend start before Trump was president?
Yeah, but when you have a president that says...
Hold on, Ben. Why would the trend start before Trump was president if those are the reasons that crime is going down?
I go back to what I was saying a second ago. You look at the president, he's empowered law enforcement to do their job. We are seeing numbers come down.
So by that logic, President
Biden, who has decided, President Biden was not tough on crime.
I don't think
anyone would say that he was.
By that same logic, okay, why would violent crime start plummeting in 2024?
It wasn't plummeting.
It went down 50%.
Yeah, it went down significantly.
If you talk to people that live in where I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, they would not say it plummeted.
I guess what I'm saying is
that's just not
true.
50%
Don't let I know you don't want to let facts get in the way of the political talking point.
No,
but
it's not
I'm just
asking. I didn't get to finish the point that I was
actually
making.
think that if you were to take politics out of the whole situation, there are a lot of complex reasons why crime goes up and why they go down, right?
Yes.
And usually the president has not a single thing to do with it.
When you lead on the issue
Democrat
nationwide,
or Republican.
it does have an impact.
Okay, nationwide, let's use actual numbers as examples. There are 18 other places, other cities that have more violent crime than Washington, D.C. Number one being St. Louis, Missouri. 4 times the homicide rate of Washington, D.C. I don't see Donald Trump sending National Guard troops and taking over the police department there. Or in Memphis, or Memphis, Tennessee, another red state. Right, okay, then Memphis was one of the murder capitals of the world.
Yeah.
And how come you're not calling for Donald Trump to send National Guard troops in there?
Because I also understand the laws, and I understand that it's different in Washington, D.C., as it was explained by
York?
Joey.
Wait. He said he wants to also move this little experiment here of taking over cities and police departments to New York, Chicago,
It's amazing
Baltimore.
how much you guys get mad about fighting crime.
No, don't change the subject. Nobody's getting mad about fighting crime. Let me finish. Nobody's getting mad about fighting crime. I come from a law enforcement family. My grandfather was the captain of the police department for 40 years in my hometown. My husband was a federal officer. I, unlike you guys, actually support federal law enforcement officers.
Doesn't sound like it.
And doesn't sound like it?
I'm sorry. You're mad at Donald Trump for enabling
You're okay with Donald Trump
Hold on
1,600 January 6th
officers
that almost killed police officers.
I'm not.
So
I want to
don't
let
conflate the
Joey
issues.
make a legal
don't ever
point.
question my support for
I want to
law
let Joey
enforcement.
make a legal point, then I want to let